just places that you've been before. Alright guys, there is so much to cover. This is the video that I was going to record yesterday, but the Ben Shapiro music video took precedence. We're essentially on the brink of, if not civil war, because what does even civil war mean in the age of fighter jets and mortars and rocket launchers and, you know, extraordinary weaponry? We are on the war of massive civil unrest, and this is so interesting. This right here is going to be the complete and thorough analysis of the situation. I'm going to cover all aspects of this, utilizing all of its resources to prevent mass unchecked illegal immigration coming across its border. That is an objective fact. It is illegal immigration, and the Biden regime is trying to get them to stop because they are pro-illegal immigration. They want unchecked borders. What we have to start by realizing is the chessboard here. The chessboard is that Texas has the National Guard. Texas has the support of people who stand, and I understand that you could call them patriots. I understand you can call them, you know, they're pretty obviously the good guys, but I'm going to try to use as unbiased language as I can here because I want to keep this a first principle analysis. We have radical leftists who are cheering on Twitter and other parts of the internet saying that the government, the federal government, needs to kill, imprison, and kill and imprison any of these people. And they are doing so not in the name of a desire to uphold laws, because they've already expressed in their opposition to border security and their stance of being pro letting mass illegal immigration coming across the border, that they're not interested in laws. Instead, they are bloodthirsty. So we have bloodthirsty people. We have people that want to stop the illegal immigration in Texas and many other states. These are just two elements on the chessboard. There is also the fact that the election is coming up in 10 months, meaning that if action taken by the current regime is drastic enough and perceived as authoritarian, it would almost ensure a Republican victory. This gives Texas an extra advantage, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this element of things. Texas has the National Guard. Texas has Border Patrol. Texas has actually Border Patrol currently disobeying the federal orders coming from Biden. Biden's own Border Patrol, as I'm about to show you, was ordered to arrest Texas National Guard members as of yesterday, and they refused. So the Biden administration has currently demonstrated that their plan was to arrest Texas National Guard members. That was their intention. That was their plan. That was their wish. And the president's wish was not fulfilled. The president's wish was denied as of yesterday when his own Border Patrol agents refused to arrest the Texas National Guard. Guys, I'm going to be thorough here, so I'm going to explain to people what the National Guard is. The National Guard is essentially Texas's own army. Every state has their own National Guard. The United States is a very, very powerful country. We have the conventional army. That is a force about 2 million people large. We have the Air Force. We have the Navy. The Navy has an Air Force that is the second largest Air Force in the world, second only to the United States Air Force. We have the Coast Guard, which is a second Navy. We have the Marines, which will do anything. And then we have the National Guard, and every state has their own National Guard. That's what we're dealing with here. That is the main backbone of the Texas resistance, is their National Guard. The National Guard has helicopters, they have armored vehicles, they even have fighter jets. They have missiles, they have it all, right? And this is what Texas has mobilized. Greg Abott has said publicly as of yesterday that he will not be complying with Biden's direct order to stop the progression of all these events. So we currently have a Texas governor and a segment of the military, being the National Guard, which is part of the military, disobeying direct orders from Washington. That is all just objective facts. That is what's going on here. As of yesterday, a 24-hour period elapsed that Biden gave Texas to stand down. And Greg Abott said, we're not going to stand down. We are going to continue with our operations. That 24 hours has elapsed, and that's why Biden has ordered his border agents to arrest Texas National Guard members. Okay, now his own border agents have refused to carry out those orders. So now we have federal agents refusing to carry out orders of the president as well to arrest Texas National Guard members. The next step, the next step would logically be, and I'm not saying this is moral, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, I'm simply saying if the Biden regime wanted to force their will on Texas, the only thing that they have left to do is to use force, which would include either I'm gonna just there are two options: either the Army or the Marines. That's the only thing they have. They have no one else that can do this because they can't use the Air Force. What is the Air Force going to do? They're not going to use bombs against Americans. They can't use a different National Guard or federal agents because not only are they weaker than the National Guard, the Texas National Guard, if conflict were to happen, but also his federal agents have already shown the fact that they are unwilling to carry out those orders against the Texas National Guard when they refuse to arrest Texas National Guard members. That leaves the Biden regime with only two options: the Army and the Marines. There's no other large force that can do this. Now, there is another element which stands in the way very, very heavily and strongly against the Biden regime doing this, which is the fact that there is an election in 10 months. If Biden were to use the Army or the Marines against the Texas National Guard, and of course civilians, because many civilians have joined in the efforts to aid in the National Guard, not only in Texas, but from other states. They've flown in militia members, civilians of Montana, New Mexico, Nebraska, Mississippi, Arizona, Nevada, the list goes on. It would be perceived as so tyrannical, as such a nuclear option, that it would almost ensure a victory for the Republicans in November. See, the problem is that they already gave orders. If they didn't give orders, then they could pretend as though we don't really care or our gears are just moving slow. But Biden's regime already gave orders, meaning that they are currently appearing weak as their own agents are refusing to arrest the Texas National Guard members, as Texas itself is refusing to follow the orders of Washington. So they are right now being perceived as weak, being perceived as ineffective, and maybe they are. Many people say they are incompetent, and of course they are incompetent, by the way. In terms of public opinions, we're going to start right at the top. Elon Musk, what does he have to say? Elon Musk says this administration is deliberately breaking the law by aiding and abetting in illegal immigration at an unacceptable scale. This is a very clear, decisive statement that is outside of the federal government, and it's probably the most weighty opinion. There is no other person besides Elon Musk, not only in terms of individual power and importance, but also in terms of reach. Elon Musk can reach a continent of people a day and generally does. And he has said that the federal government is essentially committing treason against the United States. Okay, this is very, very interesting. And the reason why this is interesting, I was thinking about showing this later in the video, but we need to understand this now. There's a section of the Constitution that, if invoked, not only justifies but requires resistance to a treasonous government. And if the federal government is deliberately aiding in the mass immigration of illegal immigrants, then that could constitute treason. Okay, so here is what you need to understand. Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution requires our government to protect and defend our borders. If government does not, the Constitution, by virtue of the named part herein, authorizes the free citizens to defend themselves and their state in place of a treasonous government. In not defending our borders, government gives aid and comfort to a hostile foreign invasion, and this, under Article 3, Section 3 of our Constitution, is properly labeled treason. So the government is very arguably committing treason currently. Free citizens are authorized to defend themselves and their state if the government will not do that. And that is the reason why Greg Abott is doing what he's doing right now. That is why Greg Abott is disobeying direct orders from Washington. Also, there is another element, which is Texas has invoked part of the state constitution saying that they are at war, that they are being invaded. This allows them to operate without the typical command structure of the military. Because when you are at war, you don't always have time to go all the way up the chain of command. You have to make decisions quickly and rapidly. And Texas has invoked an invasion clause of their constitution, which is essentially saying that they are at war currently, not with the federal government, but being invaded at their southern border. I'm going to show you an interview between Tucker Carlson and Greg Abott here. Okay, so we start with Elon Musk, right? In terms of individual power, in terms of individual reach, there is no person that tops, I was about to say Andrew Tate. That was going to be a Freudian slip. There's no one that tops Elon Musk. That's an objective fact regardless of what you think of Elon Musk. But second to him, in matters of the United States, I would say Tucker Carlson. Before I show you what he has to say, I want to make an observation, which is that the radical left has become so unthinking in their platitudes of demonization that it is almost impossible, if not completely impossible, to reason with them or have a free speech dialogue with them because they insist on demonizing any person that goes against them. And also, since they don't care about laws and are openly expressing on Twitter their desire for the federal government to at this point, kill people that they disagree with, kill Texans, that the country has become undermined as a result of having no discourse with its reaches of people. This not only prevents the potential fruits of free speech, it increases radicalization of the left, which has already expressed murderous wishes and inhuman sentiment when it comes to people they disagree with. This is very dangerous because if that goes unchecked, this will only increase. And we already see talking heads among the radical left who have rejected free speech as a principle because in order to engage in free speech, you have to use logic and reason and rationality, mechanisms that are untenable to the leftist ideology of Marxism. And so they sort of become trapped by their own ideology, trapped and isolated from people they disagree with, as well as logic and reason, which again is objective. So let's hear what Tucker Carlson has to say.
On Monday, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the Biden administration is legally allowed to open the border by force to cut down razor wire along the Rio Grande sector of the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas. The usual suspects voted for this: Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, but they were joined by so-called conservative justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett.
So this is very interesting because there's an element to this which is going unsaid, which is all but one of the people that voted for lawlessness and open borders are women. If the Supreme Court was only men, this would not have happened. This would not have passed. There would not have been those votes for open borders and pro-illegal immigration. This is a typical degenerate feminine objection to the objective world. No, we don't need to have borders. There's no such thing as strict order. We need to have open borders and feelings. This is why unchecked degenerate femininity, when it is separate from masculinity, is actually an existential threat to civilization, which must be broached and conquered in the next century.
In response to this ruling, which shocked many, the governor of Texas, Greg Abott, drafted a letter, not simply to the administration, but to the world. And here's part of what it says. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States.
Right.
Abbott goes on to say the state of Texas has the authority under the Constitution to, quote, protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land, and it supersedes any federal statutes.
The Biden administration does not want Texas or any other state to be able to protect itself for a variety of reasons. First among those reasons is they are ideologically captured by Marxism, which says there is no such thing as objective morality or any type of objective frameworks which would define the necessity to protect yourself against something. Because there is no such thing as right versus wrong when you reject the objective frameworks of morality, which is what Marxism does. Because the radical left insists on adhering to the degenerate dictates of Marxism and expects everyone else to as well, and if they don't, you're called a bad person, their policies reflect their expectation for you to abide in their unthinking leftist Marxist delusion as well. And that's why you see no action and the expectation for you to take no action to protect yourself, because there's no such thing as you versus them. There's no such thing as lawful and unlawful. There's no such thing as right and wrong. There's no such thing as illegals and citizens. These are Marxist axioms. And so you see confessed in their sickness of action, their Marxist ideology brought center stage.
And then, following very quickly, 25 other states with Republican governors signed a letter pledging their support to Texas and its constitutional right to defend itself and this country.
Wow.
Those states include Ohio, Florida, Utah, Nevada, and many others. And then the Biden administration responded. The administration threatened these states, and particularly Texas, with a, quote, 24-hour deadline to allow Border Patrol to reopen the border and to take down.
Ooh, scary, 24 hours. That 24 hours has elapsed. That's currently over now, okay? That 24 hours elapsed yesterday.
The barbed wire. Clearly a collision course. What happens next? We're thankful to be joined now by Governor Greg Abott of Texas, who joins us by phone from India. Governor Abott, thank you so much for joining us. If the administration declares that it plans to federalize the National Guard of the state of Texas, your National Guard, what will be your response?
Well, first, I'll be shocked. That would be a boneheaded move on his part, a total disaster. But for one, as you might imagine, we are prepared in the event that that unlikely event does occur to make sure that we will be able to continue exactly what we've been doing over the past months, and that is building these barriers, whether it be the constitutional wire or other anti-climate border barriers, whatever we've been building. The Biden administration is now trying to attack us because of it, and we will continue.
It's so crazy that the federal government is trying to prevent the state from preventing illegal immigration. It's illegal. It's against the law. It's not legitimate. The law says it's not legitimate, and the federal government is trying to make it possible. They're openly pro that. It's so insane. It is insane. The leftists, like I said, their sickness is manifold and public.
You to do exactly what we're doing to expand our denial of illegal entry into the state of Texas.
With state employees, I assume, not with National Guard, but can you envision a scenario in which you would put armed state employees on the border instead of the National Guard of Texas?
We do have other armed state employees on the border as we speak right this minute, and that's the Texas Department of Public Safety, as well as other law enforcement officers, as well as National Guard from other states.
Right, National Guard from other states, militia members, state troopers. There's a plethora of options. It's not just the National Guard. As a matter of fact, just an interesting fact, the police force of the United States is larger than most countries' armies. So just the police force is a huge, huge force in and of itself. And Texas has a lot of cops.
And you can be assured there will be more National Guard from other states and more law enforcement officers within the state of Texas and other states. And, Tucker, I just signed a new law in the state of Texas that will go into effect on March the 5th that authorizes any law enforcement officer in the state of Texas to be able to arrest anybody coming across the border illegally.
That is phenomenal and huge. I want to acknowledge for a second that the radical left and the evil powers that be in Washington are watching this interview and have been shown this footage. And they are infuriated that they are being resisted. They're not necessarily infuriated at the policy. Let me explain the difference. They're infuriated that people are able to see them as the immoral frauds that hate our country that they are. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Elon buying Twitter was an anomaly. If he did not buy Twitter, these conversations would be either banned or throttled into oblivion, just like conservative posts were before the election of 2020 and generally on Twitter. This is an aberration. They had not planned for this, and the fact that you can see this, the fact that I can show this to you freely, enrages them. It infuriates them, because nothing infuriates a radical leftist that believes they have counterfeit moral virtue more than you recognizing that that virtue is counterfeit and saying, wait a second, you're not actually a good person just because you're part of the radical left-wing virus. You don't actually have virtue and merit as a result of adhering to Marxism and the corresponding identity politics therein. Because when you see them as fraudulent, there's no place for them to go. There's no workaround for that. And you can see then why their ideology is very dangerous, because ultimately it has no room for any person that disagrees with them. There is no model for integration when it comes to Marxism. That's the reason why they hate free speech. That's the reason why they can't contend with free speech. That's the reason why they're angry with Elon Musk for providing free speech.
Have you spoken to the president or anyone from the Biden White House about what appears to be an imminent collision?
I have not, to be clear. I have spoken to the president about the border. I met him on a tarmac in El Paso and talked to him directly about what was going on. I handed him a letter that had in it immediate solutions he could take that would immediately secure the border without the need of any new law to be passed. Despite the fact—
Right, but they're not interested in policy, reason, or rationality. None of that is even a concern to them. As a matter of fact, I can guarantee that that was never even a part of their analysis. And I can guarantee that because Marxism is actually deathly afraid of reason and rationality in and of itself. It's not that they disagree with your solutions. They don't believe in solutions because they don't believe in objectivity.
That I handed him on altogether 8 different letters, he has refused to ever respond. My point in telling you that, we have laid down the precursor of what's called Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution to show that we have been invaded and we have demanded support from the president to safeguard our state, and they have refused to do so 8 times, and that authorized me to declare an invasion under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution to make sure that Texas is going to be able to use every tool in our arsenal to defend our state.
Wow.
Of the couple of dozen Republican-led states who've pledged support for you, how many do you think would send National Guard to Texas?
I'll be shocked and disappointed if almost all of them do not send. There have been about 10 so far that have sent National Guard or other law enforcement. They now are joined together.
This is an open FU to the Biden administration. This is an open disregard for the federal position, and this is very strong and important. This is very powerful.
With us, and this is a fight for the future of America, and they all know it. And so I believe that they will all be in on this effort.
It's just a remarkable moment, and I know you're heading out, but my final question is: how do you see this resolving? What happens next?
Well, Texas is going to continue to expand the border barriers that we are erecting, the razor wire that we're putting up, and to continue to gain control of more land over the coming months. I believe, however, that this will all come to an end on January the 20th of next year, because I believe a new president will be sworn in, a president who will actually enforce the immigration laws of the entire country.
Right, that's the linchpin. That's the event that is standing in the way of Biden federalizing the National Guard and operating with unilateral tyranny while calling themselves the good guys, as they inevitably would under Marxism. That's the element which the psychopathic psyche has to calculate for. They are psychopathic because they don't care about morality. They don't care about right and wrong. That's the definition of psychopathic. But they are calculating. They know that if they are perceived as psychopathic, just as the psychopath knows, then they will be punished. They will be held accountable. And being held accountable is the only thing that keeps the psychopath in line.
Not just the Texas border, but New Mexico and Arizona and California and the Canadian border also. And we will have safe and secure borders once again, because we will have a president who actually will enforce the laws of the United States of America.
What's super clear, guys, is that this is people who care about laws and morality versus those who don't. The left has divorced themselves from objective morality and reality. That has to be recognized here. There's not two sides to the same coin. They're not even on the same coin anymore. They, in opposition to what they, in low-resolution ideological terms, perceive as their opposition, have actually disconnected fundamentally from reason, objective morality, rationality. They have disdain for those things because the spirit of Marxism is defined by resentment for the objective. This is why they're partnered with a postmodernist philosophy that says there's no such thing as right versus wrong. It's why they're nihilistic and morally relativistic, because they don't believe, again, there's such a thing as right versus wrong. They're not playing the same game as you. They don't believe in truth. This is why all of their policies are not just wrong, they're the antithesis to what we need. They're the antithesis to what the right decision is. It's like they're looking at what the correct thing to do is and saying, we're not only going to not do that, we're going to do the opposite of that. It's because they feel an opposition, not only to you, but an opposition to the truth. They are at war with reality. This is what defines the Marxist position.
But in the next year, are you concerned about any kind of conflict between state forces, whether state employees or National Guard, and federal forces?
So, Tucker, all we can do is be as prepared as possible, deploy as many people as possible, do as much as possible to put up more border barriers and deny illegal entry. And our head is down. We're working hard, regardless of what the Biden administration is doing.
Governor,
there's a deep-seated hatred leftists have for borders. The reason for that is deeply complex and psychological. Borders imply coherence, a presupposed and understood order and logic that discerns between things, between states of existence. A border is masculine because it has all the attributes that I just listed. And all of those attributes, psychologically and philosophically, are at odds with the left-wing position, which is morally relativistic, postmodern neo-Marxist, and nihilistic. Leftists are enraged by the fact that systems exist which invalidate their philosophy just in their existence. This is why they attack those systems. Other examples of those systems would be the police. Defund the police is not a surface-level accident. The reason for their opposition to police is deep-seated. They have a hatred for that which discerns between right and wrong and imposes on them objective rules. Because objective rules are a reminder that society is built on right versus wrong. Again, reminding them that society itself fundamentally disagrees with their ideology, what their ideology has become. I'm not sure that the liberal position of the 1980s had this architecture to it. Perhaps it did, and I wasn't there to know. But I do know that this has the architecture of the Marxist philosophy, which goes back hundreds of years, and it has invaded, it has permeated the psyche of people that are predisposed to hate objective truth and reality and accountability and are generally weak psychologically. This is why you see postmodernist thought and neo-Marxist thought taking advantage of women that are raised without fathers, women that are already conditioned to hate masculinity. Remember what I said about the border being masculine. There's a presupposed position by a lot of degenerate feminists and women with destroyed psyches that say masculinity is a threat in and of itself. This is why you see strange headlines saying things like men who go to the gym are automatically white supremacists because they are enhancing the physical form of masculinity. And masculinity, while housing the tenets that I described, is untenable to them. This is why we see leftists automatically opposed to the border, automatically opposed to laws, hating police, hating the objective morality of society, and living outside of the bounds of discourse. You can't even argue with somebody who says there's no such thing as truth. There is no common ground that can be found with that person because common ground suggests a better and worse set of understandings, of principles. Is it starting to make sense? They don't believe in truth. This is the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. The local problem is forcing the psychopath to abide in society, basically showing them the consequences to their action. This will be the election. But the much more important, difficult problem is integrating leftists back into society or finding a way to divorce ourselves permanently from the destroyed, depraved, perverted psyche of those that hate truth. And that would be far more difficult. If the left insists on hating reality then and will not be reached, then total divorce will be necessary. And you might see this in a literal divorce in terms of borders and territories, or you might see this in terms of a continued cultural divorce, where there are people that believe in reality and morality and just vast swaths of people that are living in lawlessness and crime, where they, let criminals out of jail because jails are discriminatory and laws are discriminatory. This is how you see 6-time felons being released daily in New York, and they commit heinous crimes, as a result of being released, and they're not in prison for a long time yet again because the left has a vitriolic response to the notion of objective accountability. Share this video if you're watching it, okay, guys? Subscribe to the channel if you're watching this.